For the first time all year, Iowa puts together 4 quarters of good football as they dominate Washington 40-16. The most complete game of the year. We break it down rapid reaction style. This is Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. If you're listening on the podcast side, hit us up with a 5-star review. Would greatly appreciate it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, that was fun. Iowa puts together 4 quarters of good football as they run past Washington 40-16. A Washington team that obviously looks a lot different than they did just a season ago when they played Michigan for a national championship. They avenged the loss in Seattle a week ago, beating the Wolverines in pretty decidedly fashion. But this one was all about the Hawkeyes, and really short of a couple of drives early in the football game when Washington was basically able to do whatever they wanted for long, sustained parts of the football game. The Iowa defense started to gear up. They started making plays. The pressure started to amplify, and it was your prototypical Iowa football game defensively. Offensively, though, how about that? A run game, a couple of plays in the passing game. There was plenty left on the field, and we're going to talk about that here throughout as we break one down. But getting this victory now after a week ago, the loss to Ohio State. As we talked about throughout the course of the week and every day, as you know, it was more than just an indictment on the program because of one loss. It was more of a big picture kind of conversation with this Iowa football team and what they've been able to struggle to do against the elite teams of college football. Well, for Iowa, there is nobody elite left on this schedule. There are good teams, including the team they just saw in Washington. That was a good football team coming in. That was a football team, even as they came in with a 3-2 record. They dominated the game against Washington State, dominated against Rutgers, and came up short in both of those games. Field goal miss were a big part of the Rutgers loss, and just an inexplicable decision on 4th down in the loss to Wazoo. But that aside, this was a good football team, and Iowa took it to them. And Iowa got them in their style of football game, made the plays that they needed to, and eventually got the victory. So going through, and you look at the opening drive, Washington gets the ball after an Iowa 3-and-out. They march right down the field. And another thing we talked about earlier this week, and this is why it's important to be with us each and every day, is because we find some nuggets for you. And that's what we do for you, a daily podcast on the Locked On Network. And one thing that I talked about was Iowa's struggles in the red zone this year. They had been allowed 8 teams to get in the red zone, which is great, actually, through the first 5 games of the year. I mean, that's a crazy number in its own right. And most of them, a majority of them came a week ago against Ohio State. However, Iowa had not held a team out of the end zone. I mean, not even slowed them down to a field goal attempt. And to get that stop, and aided by the fan base. Boy, you guys were loud once again today, even with the 11 a.m. kickoff. That was great to see. The end zones were bumping. The whole stadium was bumping. Just a great scene at Kinnick Stadium today. But we saw the crowd force the false start, move it back to 2nd and 15. Got a little bit of pressure on that play. Now, the 3rd down throwaway, it looked like that could have maybe been intentional grounding, as there was nobody in the vicinity, and he never left the pocket. Will Rogers, the Washington quarterback. But that aside, you get the block, Y.A. Black gets the block, then Iowa marches right down, gets on the board. It was one of those games where the breaks were going Iowa's way. Iowa was making the plays on top of it, but you get that opening drive and the opening score after the 3-and-out, Kaleb Johnson down the field. That one was as pretty of a drive as Iowa's had all season long. And it was a drive that didn't have a ton to it as it pertains to, there wasn't gadget plays, there wasn't goofiness, but it was predicated on the run game. It was predicated on getting the football, doing the things that you want out of Iowa football. But so this is the drive. Iowa gets the ball back after the block field goal from Y.A. Black. Gets the ball back. First, a run from Kaleb Johnson for 11. Then a 12-yarder by Kaleb Johnson, and could have been a fumble on that play. a completion to Luke Lachey. After that, it was Caden Weegan with 11 yards on that little end around play that they ran with him. 7 more for Caleb, 2 more for Caleb, 4 more for Caleb, 16 for Moulton when he came to the game from the 22-yard line, and then first and goal from the 6, the touchdown run. It was, yes, based on the run game. It was a lot. That was a huge component of what they were doing in the run game for the Hawkeyes. But with that, you are left now looking at this team and suddenly not just running the football, not just inside outside zone plays, but there's versatility to what they're doing. They're shifting, they're moving the eyes of the defenders, and that offensive line, that drive played incredibly well once again. Now, Washington responded. They came right back. But those were the two drives of the game where we definitely saw them dominating. We saw them playing at a high level. So that's what we have right now is we have an Iowa football team. We know what they're going to do in the ground game, but you put together 4 quarters like that, this team is going to be hard to beat the rest of the year. And it's not getting ahead of yourself. And to play at this level is going to be incredibly difficult. But we got to shout out a couple of guys as well. And going through what I was able to do, take a look at the final numbers here. You have, of course, Kaleb Johnson, a star of the game once again, 21 carries, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. How about the play design as he got the touchdown reception on his second score of the day of 3 overall that he had in totality, the 2 on the ground and the 1 through the air. They have that mesh concept, guys crossing, they clear out the guys from the right side of the formation. They're all going out to the left, and then there slips out Kaleb Johnson. He gets a step on the linebacker, good completion by McNamara, and he was gone. Now, end of the first half, that was a little goofy. So you had the kick that wasn't a missed kick by the Huskies, went over the upright and looked like it was no good. You cannot review that play because it went over the crossbar. That is not reviewable. And I understand that. Look, you don't have a real angle. It looked like certainly the ball was not inside the upright on that play, but that aside. So Gross was able to get the field goal. And Drew Stevens, in his final field goal at the end of the half, probably had something similar also happening to him. So yeah, both components of that one. However, Iowa looks like they're going to run it out. All right, we'll just run that toss play. And boy, that has been a huge godsend to this Iowa offense. That toss play that they run. And it's not the old school student body right where you flip it out there and try to get out all the way to the wide side of the field. They run it with inside zone concepts on that. And it gives an ability to get outside a little bit more and then give Kaleb Johnson a couple of avenues that he can kind of choose from and go. And we know when he gets a crease, just how dangerous he is. So you have that component to it. He runs out there. His longest run of the day came on that run as he darted off there. What was it, 53 yards and set them up. Cade McNamara missed a pass. He missed a touchdown pass as he had Vanderzee coming up into the left pylon wide open and just airmailed that one. Then threw a little quick hitch out and out pattern and missed badly on that one. Cade wasn't great, but Cade was good enough. Brendan Sullivan, you saw a decision down in the goal line situation where he tried to throw the football. Luckily, his knee was down. I think it still would have been an incompletion, even if his knee wasn't down. You just can't do that. You just can't. But not only that, people are going to point to that play for Brendan Sullivan. Also remember, the first 2 plays of that drive, they're zone reads. And he walks in for a touchdown both times if he keeps the football. They're going to keep doing it. It's worked out well. And you go inside the numbers a little bit deeper and you look at the efficiency numbers of that. Iowa, a perfect 5 for 5 in the red zone. Need to do that. Held them out of the end zone with the block field goal that we mentioned a little bit earlier. That is the kind of things that you need. 5 of 10 on third down. They're moving the chains, making plays, doing those kind of things. 4 penalties in the game. Once again, one of the least penalized teams in the country and scoring points off of turnovers. I mean, these are all the components of Iowa football and what they were able to do. Here's a huge number, though. First down yardage. And this is what made this game offensively so different. We're going to get into that a little bit more, continuing to break things down. We haven't really got into the defense, and boy, what a performance out of them after those 2 early drives. We'll do that as we continue here. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. Take a look at the NFL slate. Remember, it's going to start out early on Sunday as the Bears take on the Jaguars over in London. An early start for that one, 8:30 a.m. Central Time kickoff for that. Bears just a slight favorite in this game. One, you got you covered there. Maybe you're taking a look at some of the other big matchups coming up this week. They got you covered over at FanDuel. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com for more details. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So, mention one of the biggest numbers to me of this football game. You kind of look at the total stats, you look at some of the numbers there. All right, Washington outgains Iowa, 393 in total offense for the Huskies versus 328 for Iowa. Iowa, though, nearly 100 yards more rushing in the game, average 5.9 yards per run on the game. But the first down offense, this is something that over the past few years has just gotten so bad for Iowa, and it continued to put them behind the chains, second and long, second and 8, second and 12, just time in and time out. They were struggling this. How about this? Iowa averages 9.1 yards per play on first down, 25 first down plays. They gained 227 yards in that one. Now, they ran it 20 times. That's going to happen. 4 or 5 passing, though, also on first down, working ahead of the chains, a huge component for what Iowa was doing. Mentioned 5 of 10 on third downs. That is a winnable number for Iowa, and the defense was able to get off the field. Let's talk about that defense a little bit as we're going through the numbers. Yes, Kaleb Johnson, the star. Dayton Howard, how about that? Getting that touchdown on the play action play to really salt the football game away. Just a beautiful throw from McNamara, just getting it over the defensive lineman's hands as Howard was in and getting his first score of the season. Good to see number 7 making some plays. So defensively, this is what Iowa was able to do. 14 tackles in the game for Jay Higgins. He was all over the place. Nick Jackson finishes with 11, 10 from Xavier Wampa. And boy, you could definitely see Xavier Wampa kind of almost gaining momentum as the game was going on. I think you saw this guy just understanding. He's got to play with physicality. He's got to add a little more ferocity to his game, and he definitely did that. And he saw that confidence continue to build for Xavier Wampa, and maybe his best game in a long time in a Hawkeye uniform. But the other component, Entringer, he had 7 tackles, 6 from Castro, 6 from Schulte, 5 from Deontay Craig. Finally got to the quarterback in the game. Excuse me, in the game as well. Yes, we're still dealing with that cold. Every day, as you know, we're battling here. We're battling. So back to the defense. But it wasn't just Higgins and Jackson, those guys doing their things. We saw during those 2 long double-digit play drives, over 7 minutes off the clock each time for Washington, I wasn't able to get the quarterback. They were not able to apply really any kind of pressure, and it was impactful. So what did they do? Well, we saw more Max Llewellyn, who was excellent. We saw more Brian Allen. We saw those guys both inside and outside. So at times what they're doing on some of the third down packages, and we've seen this throughout the course of the year, is instead of even playing Graves out there and Y.A. Black, take those guys off the field, and we're going to play 4 defensive ends. And because you have some pretty big defensive ends, including Deontay Craig, and with those long arms that he has, great to see him on that 2-point conversion get the sack. But he was really good, even as he was not being as impactful as you want early in the football game. Y.A. had the block. Graves was running all over the place. You know, they have a mark down here. Quarterback hurries in the game. What was it? 7, I think, was the number I saw. Yeah, 7 total hurries in the game. Boy, it felt like a lot more than that, though, didn't it? Felt like they were getting there a whole lot more. Graves finishes the game with 2 sacks. Llewellyn and Herkett, they combine on the other sack of the game, and then Brian Allen had his solo one. 4 sacks in the game, 7 hurries, but boy, it almost felt like that pressure number should be almost double what they were able to get in terms of quarterback hurries in the football game. It was a good Washington team, and Iowa took it to them. Great performance out of them. How about the play jumping the route by Jamari Harris? Jamari Harris, that's just film work. I mean, that's understanding time, situation, scheme. Jamari Harris gave up one early. He comes right back and jumping that route. Another one that in the second half really changed the complexion of that football game as Iowa started to gain a little bit of control. So you have all these components of working together. One other thing, talked about Drew Stevens. He was perfect in field goals, including the iffy one at the end of the first half. But Drew Stevens continues his solid bounce back season after the way the end of last season went from him. Look, I've been tough on Reese Dakin. Reese Dakin has had a couple of really bad moments. Last week against Ohio State, the decision to call timeout on the 4th and 1 when they were faking it, he followed it up with the 22-yard punt. Against Iowa State, had a couple of clunkers in there. And we know it's not a leg strength problem for Reese Dakin. It's a consistency thing. I've talked about Dakin, and it's going to be different than Torrey. Torrey Taylor is a once-in-a-lifetime punter. Yes, he's once in a lifetime. And you can still have really good ones, and Iowa's had other good ones, but to have a guy like that, he's one of one. He was even different than Reggie Roby, and people remember him punting. He's just different because it's not just the leg strength that Torrey Taylor had, but it was also his ability to hit a bunch of different style punts and to have the leg strength, yes, but then have the precision. And not just precision in the coffin corner, but being able to hit it high, get some backspin, give your coverage team an opportunity to down the ball inside the 5-yard line. And he was so great at that. And Dakin hopefully will get there and get at least to a competent level of that. But the two boomers that he unleashed, just absolutely missiles off his right leg. We know he has that. Get that consistency down. Now, Torrey Taylor showed up at Iowa. He was, 23 years old? I mean, this is an old dude. Not the case with Reese Dakin. And also, Torrey got to go through it his first year in 2020. Nobody in the stands. So it is a different environment for Reese Dakin. He continues like he did there. Whew, look out. We also got to mention what we saw in the return game. A couple of nice returns from Caden Weegan. Mentioned that end around that he had offensively. Good to see that one. Just a lot of good out of this football team. And it gets us excited again, right? Just when we think we're out, they suck us back in. What does that mean? We'll talk about that as we continue. What is next for this Iowa football team? And can we dare to dream just a little bit? We'll do that as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. Makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. I just got tickets on the Gametime app last week, went to a concert with my wife here in Des Moines. It was one of the Lukes, I don't know, a country singer, whatever it was, though, had a great time. Absolutely did. And we did it with the Gametime app. What I love about the Gametime app, first of all, being able to see exactly where you're going to be in the stadium, a panoramic view of your seat, knowing what you're going to do, what your experience is going to be inside the arena, inside the stadium. Plus, how about this? Knowing exactly what the cost is going to be for those tickets, a huge component of the Gametime app. I love the opportunity to hit that all-in pricing, toggling the feature, showing that total upfront, so you don't have to worry about those surprise fees at checkout with the all-in pricing. Turn on that feature with the toggling of the all-in pricing to show you those fees all up front and what exactly your ticket is going to cost. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and make sure you use the code. It's Locked On College. Use the code, people, Locked On College, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the rapid reaction after Iowa wins at 40-16 over Washington. 3 touchdowns for Kaleb Johnson. Cade McNamara at times looking solid at minimum, even as some of my frustration was building at times during the first half of that football game from him. And the defense packing a punch as they really slowed down that Washington attack after those first 2 drives of the game. So what's next? Do we dare to dream with this squad? Certainly, if they play like this, there isn't many teams that are going to beat them in all of college football. I'm not just talking about teams that are still left on their schedule. Michigan State, you're number 1 of a new regime. Northwestern, they played well last night. Still, you're not scared of the Wildcats. Wisconsin, improving, but you get them at home. UCLA, we'll see what that team looks like, but Iowa a big favorite there, even on the road. Maryland looked awful last night. And then Nebraska. I mean, the Huskers are the best team left on this schedule. And what are they going to look like come Black Friday? You have 6 games remaining where Iowa will be favored in every one of the football games. And if this momentum continues, if they play like this the rest of the way and continue to put together a 4-quarter effort like they did, this team very realistically can be 10-2. Not just 10-2 though. Remember, 8-1 in the Big Ten. Ohio State would have a tiebreaker against them, but that's it. It'll come down to tie-breaking scenarios, and Iowa like going to be in really good shape as it pertains to that. Now, with the 10-2 record, without any big-time quality victories, the likelihood is just to get in the college football playoff, Iowa's going to have to win in the Big Ten championship game, but it's not off the table. Yes, the loss to Iowa State sucked. And he played that second half 100 times. That might have been the one that Iowa lost it. However, they did. And now you got to live with it. And the wiggle room is gone. The wiggle room is completely out the window. But what we saw out of the squad here, everybody left on their schedule. Iowa's got a great chance. We'll talk about Michigan State next week. We'll do a crossover edition with Matt from Locked On Spartans. He's a really fun guy. I think you're going to enjoy that. If you haven't seen our last couple of years of episodes, both basketball and football, Matt cracks you up. He's a real fun guy, and we'll have that for you. We'll break things down a little bit deeper. We'll go deeper into this football game on our second watch of things. We always do that on Sunday evening. Rewind, take one more look and see what we can pull out of the football game. We'll get the numbers from Pro Football Focus, see if that marries. I think you're going to see some big-time numbers out of this Iowa team in this one. A lot to be happy about. It's always great to be a Hawkeye. Today, maybe just a little bit greater. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Again, hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. Really helps us out with the algorithm, getting us in front of more Hawkeye fans. If you're listening on the audio side, maybe making your way back from Iowa City, make sure to hit the 5-star review. Another one just helps us in those metrics and really something that we appreciate here. Also, this evening, I am going to be hosting Sound Off, the iconic show on 1040 WHO in Des Moines. I'm going to be hosting the back half of the show from about 5:15, 5:30 until we finish up sometime after 7 o'clock. So if you're making your way home, you're listening to this one, looking for the coverage with 1040 WHO, I will be on there with Ross Peterson. He's out in Vegas, so we'll try to keep Ross upright, but we'll have your coverage there. Again, 1040 WHO with Sound Off coming up, and I'll be there from about 5:15 until 7 o'clock, 7:15, 7:30, whenever we wrap up the show this evening. Locked On Hawkeyes, your team every day. We got you covered. We got a lot of content coming up for you each and every day. We will talk plenty of Hawkeye football coming up. We got to get into basketball. Women's basketball team with a big-time commitment today. We'll talk about that. Last week was media day for both the men and the women. Haven't had a chance really to tackle that a whole lot. We will start doing that more as we get geared up for basketball season, wrestling season right around the corner. A lot going on, and we got you covered every day here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Big Ten fans, we got you covered as well for your second listen. Check out Locked On Big Ten. Craig Sheeman puts the Big Ten first. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll talk to you again on Monday morning after a rewatch of this one. It's great to be a Hawkeye. We'll talk to you again then. Go Hawks.